Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you might be in this fine world. You are listening to the Startup Selling Show, talking sales with Scott Sambucci. That's me. Today's episode is a guest episode, and today's guest is Oscar Santolalla. Oscar is the author of a book called Create and Deliver a Killer Product Demo. So if you're out there doing product demos, you might want to listen to this episode. So Oscar's got a really great background for this work. One, because he's a sales engineer. He's out there every single day doing product demos for an enterprise software product called Ubisecure. Secondly, he is the host and producer of his own podcast. He's been doing this for over 5 years now. His podcast is called Time to Shine. He has been involved with Toastmasters and teaching people how to do presentations and public speaking. And he's also been a speaker coach for TEDx. So it's a person that is not just going out there and doing product demos every day, but he's somebody who has quite a bit of experience and expertise with presentations in general. And so Oscar did some research around this book, and it all came together through a lot of his personal research that he was doing around some of the best presentations that he's come across. And so as he did his research, he constructed this book and put together what I kind of feel like is more like a handbook. It's very short. It's a good paperback. It's the kind of book, as I mentioned here in the podcast in just a few minutes, it's the kind of book I think just getting a hard copy of it and having it sitting there in front of you as you're doing your demos, you're thinking about your trade show, you're thinking about your pre-sales demos, you're thinking about the different kinds of demos that you're doing, having this book in front of you, I think it would be a really good tactical tip for you. So throughout the conversation, we talked about the different types of demos. I just mentioned a few of them: trade shows, Zoom, those sorts of things, the virtual demos. But it turns out that he's recorded or enlisted, I think I counted 15 different types of demos, which means you need to have 15 different kinds of demos. And so we talked about a couple of those, including the trade show demo, what you should be doing in a trade show demo, what you should be doing in a pre-sales demo, and how is that different. And then we also talked about how to make sure that your demo has a main message. So for each of those different types of demos that you're doing, there should be a different takeaway for the person to whom you're demoing your product. We talked a bit about the wow moment, and then we wrapped up talking about preparation and some common pitfalls that you can avoid in your product demos. So a very, very tactical episode in my time and conversation with Oscar. I hope you'll enjoy the episode. I think you will. You know, he and we hadn't met before, so it was our first conversation. And I think we had some good back and forth around product demos, and both his experience in doing the research for the book and putting it together, as well as me doing my very best to kind of share some personal experience doing demos and some personal tips as well. So a lot of back and forth in the conversation, and I do think you'll get a lot out of it. At a minimum, as I mentioned, I think it's a book worth picking up and having in your book stack on your bookshelf as you are creating and delivering your killer product demos. Okay, that's it for now. Let's head over to my conversation with Oscar.
Hi, Scott.
Oscar, how are you?
Very good, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. What time is it for you right now?
It's almost 8 p.m. here.
Almost 8 p.m. So, dude, I'm glad that we were able to make this happen. I know the time zones don't always line up when you're in Europe and we're here in California.
Sure.
Are you you're in Helsinki right now, correct?
Yeah, in Helsinki, yes, exactly.
Cool. Awesome. Well, you ready to get started?
Yes, we don't need a video, right?
No, we don't need the video.
Okay.
Just a way for us to kind of hang out together. But if it's already dark out in Helsinki and I can't see anything.
What it is.
What time is the sun setting nowadays?
It's around 4 p.m. more or less.
4 p.m. Okay.
Or early, or 4:30 maybe.
Okay. Yeah, we just changed our clocks here, so it's sun setting around 5:30, close to 6. And eventually it'll get down to about 5 p.m., but still have a pretty full day of light. So, well, listen, man, let's dive in. And one of the places I wanted to start is, as I was reading more about your background, I was like, okay, so how do I describe Oscar? Because you're a sales engineer, you host a podcast, you're an author, and you also are a speaker coach. So when people ask you like, hey, Oscar, what do you do? How do you describe that to people?
Well, that's a good question. Well, typically I say I work as a sales engineer at Ubisecure, and I also have a podcast, Time to Shine, and one podcast for the company also. Let's talk about data identity. And also I wrote a book, Create and Deliver a Killer Product Demo, which At this point, occasionally I do talks and workshops. I used to do more often. And yes, I like writing, so I will be hopefully publishing the next book next year.
And what's the next book about? Are you allowed to talk about it?
The tentative talk title is Rock the Tech Stage. So it's more about how to give presentations about technical topics in tech conferences.
Cool. Well, listen, that's that topic, and especially the book that you've already written, Create and Deliver a Killer Product Demo, is really kind of the main topic that I want to talk about. But I think it's important to get a better sense of your background, because while I think you've written this book as an author, you're also out there every single day doing product demos. And you're also, because you have been a speaker coach and been involved with helping people learn how to do a better job presenting, everything that, like, you're coming at this from a more holistic point of view than a lot of people that are just have written a book. So if you don't mind, I'd maybe just kind of dive into the book a little bit. And I'm going to save you the shameless self-promotion, by the way. And I'm just going to do this right up front. I've got a copy of your book sitting here in front of me, which you sent to me. And I read it. And if you're listening to this podcast, if you don't listen to another minute of this podcast, you should get a copy of this book because it's really good. And it's got lots of very specific both technical and also very tactical tips. And so what I wanted to do is kind of maybe go through some of I've got, you can't see if you're listening, but I've got a bunch of Post-it notes because I've been going through the book and reading it and pulling out some of my favorite parts. So we'll try to get to as many of those Post-it notes as we can while we're here. But before we dive into that, what prompted you to write the book in the first place?
Yes, so I've been working in the tech arena for, when I was already like almost 10 years, let's say, I started having interest in talks, people who are in tech arena having great presentation talks, and I start analyzing those. And in many, I discovered after some time that some of the best ones, have a product demo in that talk. So there was like small product demo, product launches, or just a small demo there. So I got interest on that, and I started analyzing what are the best practices, dissecting these talks and product demonstration. What are the best practices? So I started giving some short talks, then some workshops, then wrote some blog articles, and I got more interest about that. So people wanted to hear more about that. So then at some point I jumped in the idea of writing a book and giving workshops. And then, because at first I got inspired by product demos that are mostly in talks, in public events, but I get feedback from people who are doing like sales, for sales meeting. So for both sides. So throughout the book, I had to do more research and talk with other experts who are doing product demonstrations very often. And based on that, I put all these pieces together and deliver this book.
Well, you've done a really nice job. And so a couple, and I just want to kind of preview a couple of things that I hope that we have a chance to talk about. One of the things in particular, like you, in chapter 2, you talked about the different types of demos. And so things like product launch demos versus startup pitch versus API demos, video recorded demos, private demos. And I think like immediately, as soon as I started looking at that list, I was struck by how many different types of demos there really can be, because I myself have demoed lots of software products, and I've done some pitching and things like that. But when you start breaking out all the different times and places where you might have to do a product demo, you realize that, wow, there's actually a pretty long list. There's probably 15 different ways or times that you're going to be doing a product demo. So that in itself was already elucidating, because I think a lot of times, if you're a startup founder, a lot of people listen to this podcast are startup founders. They're out there and they're told demo your product. I think the tendency is to just put everything into like this one category and have one demo that you do for the pitch and for investors and at the conference booth and on the phone and in person. And it turns out you've been able to research and identify probably 15 different types of demos. So just knowing that, I think, is really important, because, and we'll dive into this in a little bit more detail, from what you've described in the book, each one of those has sort of a different process. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. I found out that the main differences, I did best to put what are the main differences when can be useful. And of course, having this, if someone sees this list of type of demos and had never seen that, that also gives you idea. No, I've been using demo for maybe sales meeting and pitches, but I can use demos in many other ways.
Yeah, for sure. And then there's a couple of other key pieces of the book, like chapter 3, you talk about the main message, and you've got this really great quote from Winston Churchill where it says, a speech is like a symphony. It may have 3 movements, but it must have one dominant melody. And later on in the book, you talk about this idea of a wow moment. And so this is also something that's really, I think, really important. I want to talk more about as we have this conversation, is getting really clear about a main message. Like, what is it that we're trying to transmit to the customers, and how do we do that in a way with this, you call it the wow moment, which I think is really useful. And then the last part of the book, which talks about preparation and talks about how to avoid pitfalls, when you sort of put the whole thing together, I just found it to be like super tactical, and it's almost like a handbook. It's a book, but it's more like a handbook, and that's why I said at the top of the conversation, I definitely recommend people to grab a copy. So maybe we can just start with a couple types of demos, and I listed a few of them, but one of them that comes up, and I wanted to ask your sort of expert advice on this. One type of demo that comes up all the time, and people ask me, or clients ask me this question, and generally speaking, I know this is something that a lot of companies struggle with, and that is the trade show demo or the conference demo. So, I spent this money at a booth for a booth at a conference. I've got traffic coming by. Some people want to stick around and talk for 15 or 20 minutes. Other people, I know I have 2 minutes with them. And so how do you think about, and what have you found to be the most effective way of doing a trade show demo first and foremost?
Yes, in a trade show demo, it's of course a great opportunity to show your product. I don't think showing demos is the main reason to have a booth, but as you are there, it's an excellent opportunity. You will have most of the people you will talk with are people who came just randomly. So you need a demo that is relatively standard, easy to learn, relatively short, that gives an overview and shows something that people will get it quickly. But you will also, and this is also good way that some people who are not so technical, so anybody on your sales team, or anybody who is there in your booth can learn this demo without being an expert on the product, and deliver that demo and explain. But also, you might have the opportunity to talk with people who are more later in the sales process, who want to know more, and maybe some prospect that you have been already talking with. And for that, it's good to have some demos more elaborated. So I would say 2 types of demo are good to have that. One that anybody on your company can present it, and it's for any let's say curious person or person who is just wanted to learn about that. And people who already know about your product, well, you would give it a more elaborated demo.
So a couple questions about that. So when you say a short demo, how short is short? Because for some people, short means 10 minutes. Other times, I mean, when I hear short, like for me, I'm like, yes, well, it should be 30 seconds. And as you mentioned, like at the trade show demo, you use that term random. You get random traffic, even if you're targeting. You say, okay, we're going to this conference because this is where our target market is going to be. You still don't know for sure who people are as they're coming by the booth. And so when you say short, how short is short, and what is the main objective that I should be thinking about in that booth demo?
Yes, short, I would say maximum 5 minutes can be the minimum you can do. A demo can be 2 or 3 minutes for someone who hasn't ever seen it, I think. So between 2 and 5 minutes, that's it. What you need for someone who just want to learn about your product for the first time. And of course, if you see interest, real interest on that potential, you can in the also ask you questions. So that will be a bit longer, and you can show more. So that is like discovery. You're already, this curious person is becoming like a potential lead. Yeah, that would be as short as that, 3-5 minutes. That would be
And how do I decide what to show? Because if I'm used to doing a longer demo, like if I'm, say I'm a sales development rep or account executive, I'm doing a lot of work on the phone. And so I'm typically doing much longer demos. How do I boil it down to 2 minutes? What are some things I should be taking out of what I normally do? Or what should I just make sure, like, is there a framework that you can suggest that somebody used to get down to that 2-minute demo?
Yeah, sure. It all depends of how big is your product. If it's a product that has a relatively small number of features, there are less to choose. If it's a big product, enterprise software, well, there are so many that it's impossible to give a full demo anyway. You have to select a couple of features that will show the overview what your product really does, because at that point, the person who is in front of you probably doesn't have any idea. Often you go and visit a booth, people talk to you, the sales rep or the person is there, and sometimes you even don't get it. So it's important that you narrow down to one idea or two ideas, one feature, one main feature of the product, what you really want to show. So when the person is visiting your booth, says a goodbye, at least we'll have a clear idea. Okay, this product does this thing. I don't know the details, okay, but at least I got this idea. So it's a matter of choosing one or two main features, main ideas, and demo that.
So how would I get down to that if I am selling a more enterprise size product and it does have lots of complexity or lots of features? Is there kind of way I can narrow that down to show that one thing so that the person leaving the booth feels excited about, maybe taking a longer demo with me after the conference?
Yes, I believe that if you show that just one idea, one gives the main picture, you can continue the conversation.
All right, folks, we are off and running in my conversation with Oscar Santolalla. And I want to say thank you for listening to the Startup Selling Show. And also make sure that you get a copy of my latest book. So recently I published a book called Stop Hustling, Start Scaling. And the subtitle of the book is appropriately for this audience, Ramp Up Your B2B Startups Repeatable Revenue with the Q Framework. Ramp up your B2B startups repeatable revenue with the Q Framework. And so I wrote this book based on my experience working with startups and working at startups over the last 20 years. And the whole premise of the book is like hustle and hard work is enough to get you out of the garage and get your company up and running. But if you want to get some repeatability and eventually scalability in your sales process, then you need to have a framework in place in order to build that repeatability and scalability. So I think you're really going to enjoy a copy of the book. The easiest way to get it is to go over to my website, Salesqualia, QualiA.com. And right there at the homepage, there's a button that says Read Now. And you can download the entire book in PDF, get your own personal copy of that book, and get to work reading it and stop hustling and start scaling. Okay, that's it for the commercial. Let's head back to my conversation with Oscar. And then, so I want to switch a little bit here because another type of demo you mentioned is the pre-sales meeting. So, you read this in the book, like it's presumably the most common type of product demo. Define for me like a pre-sales meeting demo versus a larger sort of audience or longer demo as part of the sales process. Because again, like I think a lot of times, like we, as a seller, right, whether somebody requests a demo from the website and they fill out a form, or we're doing some outbound work and somebody says, yeah, I'd love to see a product demo. There's this tendency to feel like, okay, well, we have the demo, we have a demo that we do. But it sounds like there's this idea of a pre-sales meeting demo versus the larger SaaS demo. So what are the defining characteristics of a pre-sales meeting demo?
Yes, what I refer with pre-sales, I use that term in the book. I refer mostly to enterprise software. So what it normally talk about technical sales. So enterprise software, it means that normally it's a big product, typically software product, big product, in which for the very beginning with someone, it just requests a demo, the first demo. It's good to give an overview demo. And later, if this becomes a lead, you give a more elaborated demo that can last 1 hour, for instance. But so basically pre-sales, I mean by enterprise software. like big products.
Okay. And then same thing there. So is that the same concept as the trade show demo where I'm just showing just enough to get attention and then book in that longer meeting?
Yes, but you have more time for that. So normally you get this the demo request you get from the website typically, or maybe in a after a conference in a booth you get a business card and you arrange. Okay, let's have a next week 1 hour or half an hour conference call. You have a different more time, so you can make a demo that lasts the demo itself 10-20 minutes, but it's also an opportunity to present the company, present the products. So the whole meetings is longer, but the demo itself can be 10-15 minutes, depends. And at that, if it's the very first demo you're going to do, what I suggest is an overview demo. So either you show an existing customer, existing case, or you prepare a fictitious demo, like a typical demo you install on your computer, customize and show again a few features, something that gives the overview what your product does. And of course, before having this very first demo, is the best is if you have already qualified this person, right? So you can have a call before, if there's a person contacting via request demo on the website, you have a first call without a demo, just talk or exchange some questions. So you qualify. So at the time of the demo, you know a bit about the customer. You have done some research, so you can choose what are the features that I would choose. Unlike the booth in the trade show where you don't know anything and immediately you have to show something. In this, you have some time to do your preparation, to some research, or ask questions in advance.
Yeah. So for the pre-sales meeting, so now I'm thinking about, like, as a salesperson, two questions that come to mind. So the first one I'll ask is, I'm in this, let's say I'm doing a pre-sales demo, and it's just, I really just want to show 10 minutes based on some basic qualification that we've done prior to this pre-sale demo. And the person on the other end is like, oh, I want to see more. I want to keep going. And so the purpose of the pre-sales meeting the pre-sales demo is to keep it short, but the person on the other side wants to go longer. My experience has been that can be really dangerous because you can get too far along in the sale and in the perception of the product before you sort of get deep into a sales process. So have you discovered any specific techniques to say no to the longer demo after there's an initial interest, or whether that's verbal techniques or just setting up your pre-sales demo that makes it hard to continue on doing a longer demo?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Also depends on your product, how difficult it is to give more demo than the one you have prepared. In some products it's easy. You know, like, let's say 100 features, and I know exactly how to demo all of them, and for this particular demo meeting I have choose, let's say 5, and so I know I can just pick few more and do it. But in other cases you need more configuration, so you are not really ready to do more demos. So it depends on the product also. What you can do in some cases is show how the product is used in some real customers. So you go to some website and say, look at this website, they are using our software, look at this feature, how it works. So it all depends actually how the product is. That will tell you if you can easily make your demo longer, you can do more or not. I think that truly defines.
Okay. So I want to switch topics here within the demo, and I want to talk about this idea of main message. So you talked about, this is in chapter 3, how to craft your demo, and you described the main message as the ultimate message that you want your audience to remember when they leave the room. So regardless of whether your demo is short and simple or long and complex, a single core concept needs to be communicated. The question I have is, how does a company get to that message? And it sounds like not enough people are doing this.
Yeah, I believe almost nobody is thinking in that way, right? What is it's like a preparation. Even if without a demo, I mean, even if you have a sales meeting, just talking, giving sales presentation, it's good that you have this the main message you want to leave after leaving the room, no? After the guys you talk leaving the room, what you really want, and you should define it in advance. Of course, the main message and its framework is the way I have defined it is for all the type of demo that you have mentioned. There are several. So some of them are like if you have the public launch, the public demo in a product launch, you choose what is the main message you want to give to everybody, because ideally everybody will watch this with demo, either at the audience or in YouTube later. But in a sales meeting, you have done some research, you have been most probably talking with the customers, so you have an idea what they need, and you want to make sure that they get the idea that your product does what they need. So that would be the main message. I want that you see that how my product solves your problem in this way.
So going into each demo, right? So if it's my trade show booth demo, it sounds like I should be getting my team together and saying, look, there's going to be 5 or 6 of us working in this booth, right? There's 3 salespeople, the marketing person, a product person, and a CEO. And this idea of the main message is say, look, at this conference in this booth, when people come through, here's our script, like here's the 2-minute product demo that we're going to show everyone. And we just want to make sure no matter what, when people leave this booth, that they walk away with this main message, and just get everybody like 100% clear that that's the outcome. Because I can see a danger where, take the trade show booth, right, where the product person might want to go into a lot of really not, a lot of details about the product, whereas the salesperson might take a different approach. The CEO might take a different approach. And with those 3 different approaches, now you have 3 different outcomes. So this idea of the main message is like, let's all agree at the trade show booth, like what's the one thing we want people to walk away with. And it's the same with pre-sales demo. It's the same with you mentioned like a product pitch. So each of those different types of product demos, what you're saying is that each one of those demo types should have their own individual main message. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Applies to, as I told you, any kind of demo, and also just a sales meeting, any meeting. It also apply the same. Yeah.
Okay. And then related to that, you also talked about the story. So you talked about types of stories that you can use in a product demo. So like story is part of the product, a creator story, a user story. What have you found works really well? Like how do you inject story while clicking, right? So it's one thing to say, okay, here's this feature, this is what it does. And then the second part of that, the story piece, I could tell a story without showing the product. And so if I have these 2 pieces, like I've got my demo script that I want to show features, and then I also want to weave in a specific story around the founders or the company or the user. Have you found any specific techniques that work particularly well to make sure that I'm injecting the story that I need to tell to make it more memorable?
Yes, the story is it's tricky to find to elaborate good stories. As you mentioned, some of the type of stories are the founder story, the creators of the product, then the real user story, but also the story can be about the customer. So if you have a relatively clear idea about what the customer is doing, what the business is doing, you can also use that story in the narrative. So the story is good to tell it before the demo itself. In the book, I have a framework in which before the demo, I have what I call a pre-demo. It's first introducing the presenter. Well, that it's sometimes is useful, sometimes not. But what you have to say at least is setting the context, what I call setting the context. That is telling, today I'm going to present you a demonstration of this product, in particular solving these challenges you have, or in these verticals, how it applies in these verticals, how it applies in this type of users, etc. Giving some context, very short. Before short mean just couple of phrases. That's enough. 2-3 phrases. That's enough. You don't have to spend minutes saying that. And then you start doing the demo. So as you have already give some context, so the people, your audience has some picture in their minds. At the time you are doing the clicks, the demo, the steps, you can use some of the elements you have mentioned in this setting the context to mention there. So okay, now you are in this part of the demo and this connects with what you just have said before. So that's what I would say. It's a matter of very shortly in 2-3 phrases explaining, setting the context, what is coming. So at the time you are doing the steps, the clicks, you connect that with that story.
Okay, yeah, I hadn't thought about it that way, and that like introducing what the context is, or like you said, setting a context, because then it anchors the person that you're demoing to that, because that story, like as humans, we're geared and wired to remember stories. So if you before you even show the product, you anchor that story in their head, then they're going to be thinking about that story while they're looking at the product. And then, as you mentioned, throughout the demo, you can allude back to it, like, oh, remember I said, we're going to make the context around this demo was this particular story. Well, here's an example where that feature helps support that story. So that's sort of, it sounds like the answer to the question is, number one, set the context at the beginning, and then number two, just layering in mentions of that story around the features that you're showing, and that's what gets it away from just being feature dumping and just being storytelling.
Yes, because it's very likely that you lose your audience if you just start, let's say, the time start running and you have to show the screens, click, and you have to start saying, okay, I'll log in and go to the next page without saying any, setting the context. If you just start doing a demo, it's very easy to lose them. So that's why it's important to, before you start doing any click, set a context. So take your time so people will definitely get it. For me, it's a must. I never do a demo without saying few words about what is coming, give it some hits, what is coming.
Yeah, and as I think more about this, then it gives you an opportunity to check for acceptance along the way. Because like if I'm, a couple minutes into a demo and I can just say, hey, now that I've shown you just a couple of the things, can you see how that, can you see how this product solves that problem for this customer that I mentioned before I showed the product? So it's a way for you to check in with somebody to make sure that they're connecting not just the clicks that you're showing, but how those clicks relate back to the story. Because if they can, they're like, no, I still don't understand, I don't get it. Then
yes.
You've got some work to do. And if they do, then it's an opportunity to sort of like keep the momentum going in the conversation. Cool. Okay. So if we're continuing, I'm just going to sort of continue through this process of the demo. One of the things you mentioned in chapter 5, or the whole chapter 5, is create a wow moment. And you mentioned an example of some really good demos that have done this particularly well. But can you describe for somebody, when you say like, what's a wow moment in a demo? What does that mean, first of all, and then we'll get into how to create one.
Yes, wow moment is a very small section on the demo. Can be just definitely just few seconds. Can be 1 or 2 seconds or as short as that. And when you show the best of your product in a way that can be unexpected, or can be that just quickly the person say, oh, yeah, this is exactly what we need. This solved my problem in a short moment. So it's important to define these wow moments, because most of demos don't have that, unless there's something really really cool and obviously impressive in your product. But typically they don't have. So you have to use some techniques. For instance, there are suggestions on the book how you can, for instance, comparing your product with some previous solution. You can, by comparison, via exaggeration, you can also create a wow moment by exaggerating some of the features or characteristics of your product to make it impressive. So there are a few techniques.
What do you mean by that when you say exaggerate? Because a lot of times exaggerate can be construed as a negative word. Like exaggeration means I'm, expanding beyond what is truth. But in this case, it sounds like you don't mean exaggeration in a negative way. I mean to just make sure it's really pronounced, that it's really clear.
Yeah, in a good way. Well, the one that comes to my mind, and it's also on the book, is there was a video by Volvo Dynamic Steering. Since a few years ago, they made a video commercial, but it's basically a demo what they do. They wanted to show how soft is this steering of these huge trucks, and so they hire Jean-Claude Van Damme, and he made a split on top of these two huge Volvo trucks that were moving in reverse. So that what they want to prove is that it's the way they steer in movies so soft, so precise that a person can do such a stunt.
So that's a really good example, and I think I remember seeing that commercial. As soon as you mentioned there's Jean-Claude Van Damme. How do we translate that into software? How do we create an exaggeration so that, because for us as the seller, it might be really clear and pronounced for us, but not as much for the buyer. Like how do we get to that point? Is there an example from a software product that you can think of that would exaggerate the particular feature in a good way?
Yeah, it doesn't come from the top of my mind now. No, I don't have one. I would need to think about one can be a good example of that.
Okay, no worries. And so, so then the last couple of things I wanted to ask about was just preparation and avoiding pitfalls. So towards the end of the book, you talked about, planning for a worst case scenario, and do you need slides and those sorts of things. And then you also talked about avoiding common glitches. What are 2 or 3 biggest mistakes that you're seeing people make when they're doing their product demos that could easily be avoided, but they're just not doing the right prep?
Yeah, well, one thing is not having a backup of the device they are using. Typically, the people who are listening to this, their product is a software. So that software is installed in some device. So the device has an operating system. So there can be a problem with the operating system. There can be a problem with the device itself, even if your product is working perfect. So it's good to have a backup. For instance, if you have if you're doing the demo on your laptop, so make sure in your colleague can have the same setup to make a demo in case your device fails, or if you have a video you can show. So having a backup in case something happened. Another very very basic is some notifications. No, the same we have in every device there are some notifications, and sometimes can be really embarrassing. I've seen some videos of people that are doing nice demo and suddenly some notification, and those are easy to stop before. So it's good to do it before.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the fact, my wife and I are texting throughout the course of the day, and it could be anything from like who's going to pick our son up from school to grocery shopping to who knows what, right? So, that pops up on your computer screen as a notification, right? So just fine, because I'm not usually, sitting in front of people doing product demos in my world, but if I'm doing GoToMeeting or Zoom or in person, right, all of a sudden I get some picture that's sent to me that I don't want people to see, or some kind of comment. Yeah, I can definitely see the notification thing. I've seen that myself, for sure.
And sometimes it's funny, sometimes So you have to be prepared for that. You never know what's going to happen. And the third one would be that if you are doing the demo in a setup you are not used to do it. Let's say you visit a customer, so try to test the demo before the setup, no, because you never know what is different, the Wi-Fi, the connection to the display. If you're in another country, even the electricity plugins are different. So there are so many things that it's good to know. If you have time to be in advance, 1 hour in advance, for instance, and try that everything works well, do it. If you don't have information, try to ask to the person who is hosting you. So this, don't assume that at your office the demo works 100% perfect. It's going to work as perfect as that in somewhere else.
Yeah, the internet thing, you just brought back some memories of situations where, like, for example, I remember going to a very large customer and I said, "Oh, you have Wi-Fi?" "Yep, we've got Wi-Fi." "Cool. How do I connect with it?" "Well, we need to send a request to IT to get you approved."
Mm.
I was like, "Oh, okay. Probably should have checked on that beforehand, right?" Because it was, it was a highly secure environment in the financial services sector, and so they didn't have it wasn't like a coffee shop Wi-Fi where you could just connect to it. You could connect to it as a guest, but they had to approve you. Fortunately, we were able to get the approval in like 10 minutes. And I was there, early enough, but I was like, wow, that could have been really bad because, I just expected there was Wi-Fi. And the other time, and I had another situation where we actually didn't have internet in the conference room. So we had booked a conference room and we got in there and they're like, "Oh, we don't have internet in this conference room. Like, we have Wi-Fi, but it doesn't work very well." Yeah, exactly. And so because of that, those two stories, I actually made it a point to, ahead of anytime I was going on site, I would ask, kind of like, if we had like a business person we were working with, I'd ask if there was like a point of contact, like a logistics person or an executive assistant or somebody that I could have a quick call with a day ahead of time and just go through my own checklist. So, okay, do we have, Wi-Fi in that room? Do I need a password? I would also ask stuff like, is there anybody that's booked in that conference room before or after our meeting? Yes. So if we have a meeting, say from 2 to 3, if there's somebody in there before us, and what happens with conference rooms, everybody's always running late. So now if you can find out if that room is open beforehand, then you can ask the assistant, like, "Hey, would you mind booking an extra 30 minutes before our 2:00 meeting so I can get in there and get set up?" That was something that was big. And then also booking an extra 30 minutes after in case the meeting goes long. Because if somebody else is like ready to barge in and you're just getting to, post demo and they want to talk about a pilot or something else, now all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, well, we got to go because John's got the conference room next." You're really stuck. So like, just having somebody as a point of contact and just asking your business person, I found was like a huge boost. It just reduced the stress. And frankly, it just made me look a lot more professional because everything worked really seamlessly for the client.
Yeah, that's excellent advice. Yes.
Well, great, man. Oscar, it's been really good having you here on the show. I'm glad that we were able to kind of talk through some of the tactical stuff. Like I said at the top, the book is called Create and Deliver Killer Product Demo. And it's available on Amazon, correct?
Yeah, it's on Amazon. It's on mostly any online shop that you can find it there.
Cool. And then if people want to get in touch with you about the work that you're doing, either as a speaking coach or some of the other work that you do around product demos or any other way, what's the best place for people to reach you? Is it email? Is it LinkedIn?
Yeah, I think LinkedIn is a good way. I'm pretty active in LinkedIn, so that's the best way to find me. So feel free to send a connection or just get in touch with that. And related to the book, I can give you a special discount for the guys who are listening to this. If you go directly if you go directly to my publisher, that is Apress. So apress.com, apress.com, and you search for Create and Deliver a Killer Product Demo, you will get a 20% discount with the coupon code Killer Product Demo. Killer Product Demo.
Killer Product Demo. Is that, and it's just all one word?
Yes, all one word.
Okay. Killer Product Demo. Okay, I was just pulling up the website and it's right here. So yeah, we'll put a link to that in the show notes as well to do that. And you've got an ebook version, and obviously I have the hard copy. I kind of feel like, as I've said, like, this is kind of a handbook. So the ebooks are usually a little bit less expensive, but this is something I think it's worth spending a few extra dollars because it's a book that you can read, and then I think it's important to just like, hey, we're going to the trade show next week. Let's just grab the book, flip through it, make sure that we're doing everything we're supposed to do to prep for that. Or you've got a a big client that you're doing a demo for virtually. It just feels like the kind of book that you just want to have laying around. And if it's on your Kindle or something like that, it's a little bit harder to page through and get the most out of it. So at least that's my recommendation.
Oh, thanks a lot. I'm really glad that you like it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks for writing it. I think it's there's not, I don't think there's really as many books as there needs to be. I think there's a lot of books about public speaking and presentations, but when it gets down to like really specific product demo types of books, there's just not enough of them out there. And so it's good for you. Definitely recommend folks getting a copy. And like I said, really good having you on the show here, Oscar. We'll let you get back to your evening because I know it's getting late there in Helsinki. And as soon as we get this episode up and published, then we'll let you know, and you can share it with your people around you too. Okay.
Thank you. It was my pleasure talking with you, Scott, and have a nice day.
All right. See you later, Oscar. Talk to you soon.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
All right, folks. That's a wrap. Thanks for listening to the Startup Selling Show, Talking Sales with Scott Sambucci. That's me. Listen, if you've enjoyed this episode or any of the episodes that we've published here on the Startup Selling Show, I would really, really love it if you could leave a review or share an episode with a friend or 10. Viral is still the very best way to get the word out about the podcast. And there's nothing that we love more than seeing the clicks go up, the subscriptions go up, the downloads go up. We're doing our very best to bring you the very best content, very, really tactical stuff around your sales process and your startup. So the more, we like to see the dopamine hits just like everyone else. So I would love to get the word out and get the podcast out to as many people as possible. So that's it for now. Look forward to the next episode coming very soon. This is Scott Sambucci signing off.